All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're exploring the Bunu people of Ghana
Their history, their culture.
and what makes them so unique, even within the larger Akan ethnic group they're a part of.
It's a deep dive into a rich cultural tapestry, going all the way back to the ancient Bono State,
And get this, their social structure is matrilineal.
meaning lineage is traced through the mother's line.
That's fascinating. It has some pretty interesting implications. But first, where do we even find the Bunu people?
Mostly in the Bono region of Ghana.
Okay.
Yeah, around towns like Drobo, Japekram, and Nukaranza. Those are like key locations.
Key locations.
Yeah, their cultural heartland.
And they have their own language, right? Bunu.
Exactly. It's an Akan dialect, but with its
Gives them
own...
little twists.
Exactly, its own unique flavor.
And like a lot of languages in that region, it's tonal, right?
That's right. The meaning of a word can change entirely based on the pitch.
Oh, wow.
Like, for instance, the word da.
Okay.
It can mean sleep, bite, or create, all depending on how you say it.
Wow. That's a lot of responsibility for one little word.
It is. It makes you think about language differently, doesn't it?
It really does. Makes me appreciate the simplicity of English. But let's go back to their roots. They have a connection to the Bono State, right? One of the earliest Akan kingdoms.
Yeah, it was powerful, known for its gold trade, amazing craftsmanship.
And their political system was really advanced for its time.
It's believed that the Bunu people migrated from there, but held on to their own distinct identity.
Like a cultural family tree. So how does that legacy show up in their traditions? What are some of the key elements that make Bunu culture so unique?
Well, the Yam Festival is a big one. It's also called Odwira, or Ahoba.
It's a big celebration for a lot of Akan groups, right?
It is, yeah. For the Bunu, it's a time to be grateful for the harvest, honor their ancestors, and connect with the spiritual realm.
And that ancestor veneration is huge for them, right? It's not just a past thing. It's like the ancestors are still very much present.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Akan believe that their ancestors are still very much involved in their lives, even after death.
Yeah.
So keeping them happy and asking for guidance is super important.
So it's not just a festival, it's woven into their daily life. And what about music and dance? Are those traditions as vibrant as their festival?
Oh, definitely. They're part of the rich tradition of Akan music and dance. Things like Adoa and Ki.
Okay,
You see them at festivals, funerals, all sorts of big life events.
I was trying to picture them from some descriptions I read. Like, they have these elaborate costumes and intricate footwork, and drumming is so central. What makes these dance forms so special?
Well, take Adoa, for instance. The movements tell stories. They're like living embodiments of their history and wisdom, you know?
It's like they're dancing their history. Now, clothing. Kente cloth, it's iconic.
Right.
But they also have a Dinkra cloth with all those symbolic patterns. Are those specific to the Bunu, or is that more of a broader Akan thing?
Both Kente and Adinkra are important in Akan culture. Kente, with those vibrant colors and those intricate patterns, you know,
Yeah.
it's a symbol of pride. You often see it at special
Like
occasions.
wearable art.
It is. And then you've got Adinkra. Each pattern represents a proverb, a belief, or a concept.
Oh, wow.
Like, for example, Giainami represents the supremacy of God.
Oh.
And Sankofa encourages us to learn from the past.
It's like wearing your values.
Literally.
This is all so fascinating. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. But there's just so much to Bunu culture. We haven't even gotten to their religious beliefs or that matrilineal social structure that I'm so curious about.
Oh, we've got a lot more to unpack.
And how they're navigating modernization, that's a whole other layer. I think we need to save that for part 2 of this deep dive.
Agreed. Lots more to explore. Until then, just let all this sink in. Picture a Bunu village. The sights, the sounds, the rhythm of the drums, the colors of Kente and Adinkra. We'll be back soon to uncover more.
Welcome back. We're picking up where we left off. I'm especially fascinated by those Adinkra symbols. It's amazing how much meaning they pack into their culture.
Right. It shows how connected they are to their heritage.
Yeah.
And speaking of connections, their religious beliefs are a really interesting mix of traditional stuff
Okay.
and newer influence.
So let's break it down a little. What are some of the core ideas in their traditional beliefs?
Well, ancestor worship is really important, like a lot of Akan groups.
Right.
They believe their ancestors are still watching over them, even after they're gone.
Yeah, guiding them, protecting them.
Exactly.
Which goes back to the Yam Festival, giving thanks to the ancestors. It's all connected.
It is. And they also believe in a supreme god, Naeme. But plus they have all these lesser deities and spirits that control different parts of nature and life.
Okay.
a pretty complex spiritual world.
Yeah. But a lot of Bunu people have also become Christians or Muslims, right?
They have.
So how do they reconcile these different belief systems?
It shows how adaptable culture can be. They often blend parts of those newer faiths into their existing practices. It's really interesting.
Right, they're not just abandoning one for the other.
Not at all. It's called religious syncretism.
Okay.
You see it a lot in cultures, especially where different belief systems have mixed over time.
So they're kind of taking the best of both worlds.
In a way, yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, we can't talk about the Bunu without talking about their matrilineal social structure.
Yeah,
It's so different from what most of us are used to.
it is. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about family.
Absolutely. So remind us again, everything passes down through the mother's side, right?
Right. Inheritance, the family name,
Okay.
even what clan you belong to, it goes through the mother.
Wow. So how does that affect everyday life? Does it really shift how families make decisions?
Absolutely. It changes everything. Family dynamics, who gets what, even the roles women play.
Okay, give me an example. How does this work in practice?
Sure. Say a man dies. His heir isn't his own son.
Who is it?
It's his sister's son.
Oh, wow.
The maternal uncle becomes super important. It really changes family relationships, you know?
Yeah, that's a different way of thinking about family.
It is.
I imagine it creates this strong support network within the family, but also lots of responsibility.
Exactly. And it really empowers women. It gives them real authority within the family, the community. They make big decisions, and they're the ones passing on traditions and knowledge to the next generation.
That's amazing. It challenges a lot of assumptions we might have. So I'm starting to see how the system might even affect their economics.
Right.
But I have to ask, does this matrilineal structure mean women hold political power too? Like, do they become chiefs?
It's complicated.
Huh.
Traditionally, those roles, the chiefs or omanhane,
Manheim.
yeah, they're often men, but women have a huge influence in the clan structure.
Okay.
They advise the chiefs, and they're vital in keeping the peace and resolving conflicts.
So maybe they're not always the ones with the titles.
Right.
But they're the power behind the throne.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's important to remember, matrilineal doesn't automatically mean matriarchy.
Right.
Women don't rule over men. It's more about recognizing that the female line is what holds the whole society together.
Right. It's about lineage.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how different cultures approach things like gender and power. But we have to acknowledge the Bunu people, like a lot of traditional communities,
Yeah,
are facing the realities of a modern world.
they are.
We've talked about the challenges: limited access to education and healthcare, infrastructure problems.
It's a common story, unfortunately. For a lot of rural communities, it's the same.
Right. And then there's that push and pull between preserving their traditions and embracing progress. How are the Bunu dealing with this?
Well, the younger generation, they're exposed to so much more now. Western influence, technology, different ways of thinking. And that leads to changes, sometimes tension between the generations.
It makes you think about globalization,
Yeah.
how it can make cultures more similar, but also maybe create new ways to preserve traditions.
It's a two-way street.
Exactly. Like the internet has allowed Bunu music and dance and art to reach people all over the world.
It has.
Maybe that'll spark new interest among young people too.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Globalization can do both erode and revive culture. It all depends how you handle it.
Yeah. And that's what the Bunus are doing. Handling it. Finding ways to blend the old with the new.
They're really creative in how they're doing it.
Making sure their culture stays alive and relevant, but without losing what makes it unique.
That's the key.
It's inspiring. They're not just surviving, they're shaping their own future. We've covered so much: their history, their culture, their beliefs, their social structure. But there's one piece missing. How do they make a living? What's their economic life like? What role do they play in Ghana as a whole?
Great question. That's a perfect transition to the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore how the Bunu people earn a living next time, their traditional practices, the challenges, and how they're finding their place in the global economy.
Sounds good. Can't wait. We're back, ready for the final chapter of our Bunu deep dive. I'm excited to learn about the economic side of their culture. We've talked about traditions, social structures, but how do they actually make a living? What drives their local economies?
Well, it's a fascinating mix of really old practices and their connection to the wider world, the global market.
Okay.
But I think at their core, The Bono people are farmers. They're very tied to the land.
That makes sense given their connection to their ancestors,
And-
the importance of the Yam Festival.
Exactly.
So what kinds of crops are we talking about? What do they grow?
Their main crops are staples, things like yams, cassava, maize. Those are the basis of their diet.
The essentials.
Yeah, but they also grow cocoa. That's a big cash crop, and it links them to the global economy.
Cocoa. So the Bono people are part of the chocolate we eat.
They are. Ghana's a major cocoa producer, and the Bono play a big part in that. Their beans are going all over the world, ending up in chocolate.
It's amazing. It really shows how interconnected we all are. But farming can't be their only source of income, right?
You're right. They've got this rich tradition of crafts, too. It's part of their economic well-being, but it's also a big part of their cultural identity.
This is where the weaving comes in, right?
Right.
The kente and adinkra cloths we talked about.
Exactly. The Bono are known for their incredible weaving skills, creating these beautiful fabrics that have so much meaning. They're treasured within the community. And people all over the world, art collectors, fashion designers, they seek them out.
So it's a source of income, but also pride.
For sure. It's both. Many Bono artisans depend on it.
It's amazing how their art connects them to a global audience. What other crafts do they practice?
Well, there's pottery. They make these beautiful ceramics. Some are practical for everyday use,
Oh, cool.
and some are ceremonial for special occasions.
Oh.
And then there's wood carving. They create intricate masks, statues, furniture. It's all really reflective of their heritage.
It sounds like their creative spirit is everywhere. But we've talked about the challenges too. Limited access to education, healthcare, infrastructure. How do those things affect their ability to make a living?
Well, if people don't have a good education,
Mm.
it limits what kind of jobs they can get
Right.
and makes it harder to keep up with new technology.
Yeah.
And then poor infrastructure makes it difficult to get their goods to market or even get the resources they need for their crafts.
It's a real uphill battle.
It is.
It shows how economic opportunity isn't just about working hard or being talented.
It's true. There's a lot more to it. But despite all that, the Bono people are incredibly resilient. They're resourceful.
Yeah.
They're bridging that gap between their old ways and the modern world,
Finding that balance.
preserving their heritage while finding new ways to grow economically.
It's impressive. Do you have any examples? How are they doing that?
Well, for example, some Bono artisans are starting to sell their crafts online, reaching a global market, going beyond just local customers.
That's fantastic.
They're really adapting. They have a great entrepreneurial spirit. Their story is really a testament to human resilience. Even with all the challenges, they're finding ways to not just survive, but thrive, embracing new ideas, but staying true to who they are.
It's inspiring. It really is. This deep dive has been amazing. We've learned so much about the Bono people,
Yeah.
their history, their traditions, their beliefs, how their society works, and their unique place in the global economy.
Absolutely. It's been a privilege to share their story. I'm leaving with such an appreciation for their resilience, their creativity, and just how rich their culture is.
Me too. I'm really glad we did this deep dive. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Well, I think we've covered a lot, but it all makes me wonder. We talked about the Bono's matrilineal system, right? How do you think that unique social structure might influence their approach to economic development? Could it offer alternative models for empowerment and sustainability? I think there's a lot to learn there, maybe even lessons for the rest of the world.
You're so right. Their story shows us that there are so many ways to organize societies and approach economic challenges. We can learn a lot from cultures different from our own. So, to our listeners, I really encourage you, keep learning about the Bono people. Dive deeper into their history, appreciate their art, maybe even treat yourself to some Ghanaian chocolate. You'll have this whole new connection to their culture. It's pretty amazing. Thanks for joining us.